Gym Candy Part 2, Chapter 7. I ended up practicing hard every single day, just like my dad wanted. But I wasn't doing it because I thought I had a chance to start. I was doing it because I didn't know how else to play. If the ball was in my hands, I was going to take it as far upfield as I could. And it didn't matter that it was only practice. Football was in my blood. During the games, I was on the field for kickoffs, punts, and extra points. But on those first few downs, I played like a crazy man, flying down the field, breaking through blockers, and laying big hits on guys on the other team. In the opener, I blocked a field goal, and in the next 3 games, I forced 2 fumbles, both of which led to touchdowns. After those big plays, I automatically looked up into the stands toward the 50-yard line to where my dad always sat. But he skipped those games. If I wasn't going to carry the ball, he wasn't going to show up. After a Monday practice halfway through the seasons, Downs asked me to stop by his office. "Don't worry," he said. "It's all good." Drew had overheard. "What's up?" he said. I shrugged. "No idea." I dressed quickly and then went to the coach's office and knocked. He looked through the glass window and waved me in. "Sit down," he said, pointing to the chair. He picked up a pencil and tapped it on his desk blotter. "I've noticed, Mick, from the first practice last spring to today, your hustle, your attitude, fantastic. Like no other kid I've coached. Ever. I've never had a freshman as a captain, not in 10 years of coaching. But starting with our next game, there will be a C on your helmet and a C stitched on the right shoulder of your jersey." He stood and reached his hand across the desk. "Congratulations." My face reddened with pleasure. "Thanks, Coach," I said. "Thanks a lot." He smiled, his eyes alive. "It's not a gift. You earned it." When I returned to the locker room, Drew came over. "So?" I couldn't hide the smile taking over my face. "Downs made me a special teams captain." Drew didn't hold back. "Captain," he said, and then he pounded me a couple of times on the shoulder. "Good for you, good for you." He grabbed Deshaun free. "Mick's just been made captain." Deshaun high-fived me, and then Drew went and grabbed another guy and another guy and another guy. I told my mom when she came home from work. "Way to go," she said. "That is some honor." She paused. "Call your dad." "I'll tell him when he comes home," I said. "You'll be asleep when he comes home. Call and tell him now." I dialed the station. "Your dad's on air right now," a woman said, "but we break for a commercial in 2 minutes. Can we wait?" 2 minutes later, his voice was on the line. "What's up?" I took a deep breath. "Coach named me captain of the special teams. I'm the only freshman who's ever made captain, and he's been coaching for 10 years. I get a C on my helmet and the shoulder of my jersey." Hey, he said. "Next game, I make the call on the coin toss, and if there's any argument about penalties or anything like that on a kickoff or punt, I'm the one who goes to the ref." "Wonderful." There was a pause. "How about playing time at running back? Now that you're captain, is that coach finally going to let you have some carries?" His words sucked everything good out of me. "You know how that works," I said. "Nothing's changed." "What do you mean nothing has changed? You're a captain now. Did you tell him you want to start?" "I don't have to tell him, Dad. He knows." "Mick, the C on the uniform and on the helmet, that's all nice. But you're not going to make a name for yourself calling heads or tails." He paused. "Look, the commercial break is ending. I've got to get back to work. But go to your coach tomorrow. Tell him that if you're good enough to be captain, you're good enough to carry the ball." I swallowed. "Dad." "Do it, Mick. You've got nothing to lose." For the rest of the night and the next day, I kept thinking about what my dad had said. Sometimes it seemed as if he were asking me to slit my own throat, but at other times I'd think he was right. If Downs could make me captain, why couldn't he let me start? And what did I have to lose? If he said no, so what? After Tuesday's practice, I walked down the long hallway and knocked on Coach Downs' office door. He looked up, motioning me in, and then picked up my game jersey from his desktop. A big C was on the right shoulder. "I was going to send for you. Pretty cool, isn't it?" "It's great," I said, fingering it. "Coach," I said. "What?" "I was just wondering if maybe I could get some carries at running back. Not start, but maybe alternate. I think I—" "Stop right there, Mick." "It's just that I said stop." He stared at me for what seemed like an hour. "I decide who plays and who doesn't, just like I decide who is captain and who isn't. You got that?" I nodded. "Okay then, now take your jersey and get out of here." Chapter 8. Little by little, the season slipped away. Eastlake had beaten us 28-16 in the opener, But after that, we've managed to sneak by everybody else we'd played. Some games we were the better team. Garfield and Franklin and Roosevelt had half the guys and half the talent. Some games we were lucky. Bothell fumbled 5 times in the first half. Woodinville's all-league quarterback was out with an injury, and his replacement threw 3 interceptions. I was still playing hard on special teams, but I didn't even think about starting. After the whole team captain thing, even my dad gave up. Next year, I told myself, next year. And then I caught a break, and so did Drew. On the Sunday before the showdown at Foothill, the cops caught Drager and Clark drinking at Salmon Bay Park. They'd scuffled with the police and ended up being handcuffed and dragged off to juvenile hall. In school, kids talked about nothing else. Before Monday's practice, Downs called the team together. He said the normal stuff about responsibility and maturity, and then he told us about Drager and Clark, that Drager and Clark had let the team down. Look what a 6-pack of beer cost them. They'll miss the Foothill game and the chance to win the King Co. title and move into the playoffs. Think hard before you act, because what you do carries consequences. On the field, Downs moved Drew and me to the first team, which I expected. But since Drew had practiced more with Deshaun Free than he had with any other receiver, Downs decided to make Deshaun a starter too. It was as if we'd won the lottery. The workout was light, helmets and shorts, and through all of it, the offense was completely out of sync. But not even a bad practice could bring the 3 of us down. We were starting on Friday against Foothill. That was all that mattered. I thought about staying up to tell my dad I was going to start against Foothill, or maybe writing him a note, but in the end I didn't. I decided it was smarter to wait until I was dead sure. There was always the chance that Drager would somehow weasel his way back into the team and back into the starting lineup. Tuesday and Wednesday came and went with no change. Thursday, Clark and Drager were back at school. I stood off to the side and listened as Nolan Brown asked them how they stood. "We're done for the year," Drager said, his dark eyes glowering. "Even if you guys somehow beat Foothill, we won't play in the regionals. It sucks." That night I waited up for my dad. As soon as I heard him come up the door, I slipped downstairs. "Hey, what's up?" he said. "Can you get tomorrow night off?" I asked him. He shrugged. "I don't know. I suppose." "Why?" "I'm starting," I said, "against Foothill, the championship game." Chapter 9. Our game day practices weren't really practices at all. Friday after school, we met in the gym, did some stretching, a little running, and some more stretching. It was all over in 45 minutes. When I got home, I forced myself to eat half of the ham and cheese sandwich my mom had made for my pregame meal. Once I'd finished, I went upstairs and lay down, trying to rest. I kept opening my eyes, looking at the clock, hoping it was time to go. Every minute seemed like 10. It was an away game, over in Bellevue, and Downs was requiring that we go as a team on the school bus. We were to be in the school parking lot by 6. Drew's dad was picking me up at 5:50. At last I heard a horn sound in the driveway. I grabbed my duffel, hustled down the stairs, and got in Drew's car. 45 minutes later, I was stepping down off the school bus and heading to the locker room at Foothill High. Once we were in uniform, Coach Downs told us we had to stay within ourselves, to play under control. My mind was racing so fast, I had to suck in air to calm myself down. Felipe Perez, one of the linemen, looked over at me and shook his head. "Save some energy, Johnson," he said. "You're going to be worn out before the game starts." As game time neared, a sense of power filled me. It started in the back of my head and spread like a wildfire until I felt as if I were going to explode. Right then, Lee Choi went to a locker and started pounding on it, pounding and screaming. No one had ever done anything like that before any of our other games. I looked at Choi, and then I started pounding on the locker in front of me, pounding on it like one of those insane Norwegian berserkers I'd read about in 6th grade. I spotted Drew. I could feel him holding back. Then a little smile came to his eyes, and he went over to a locker and started pounding and screaming, and then Brad Middleton, the middle linebacker, joined us, and after that, Heath Swenson started up, and soon everybody was pounding on the lockers and screaming, getting higher and higher. After a couple of minutes, Coach Downs put his fingers in his mouth and blasted one of those ear-piercing whistles of his. "All right, gentlemen," he hollered, "let's play football." We raced through the tunnel and onto the field. As I did my jumping jacks and sit-ups, I stole peeks into the stands. My dad had told me he was doing half his shift to keep Lion happy, but that he'd be in the stands by game time. I didn't see him for a while, but then I picked him out, and I got a rush that was like scoring a touchdown in the fourth quarter of a tie game. A little later, a horn sounded, and then the Foothill Band played the Star-Spangled Banner. Game time.